Welcome once again to the Brownstone, Wolfe's sanctuary of logic, orchids, and murder. Do tell us where in the world you're listening from, and don't hesitate to share your thoughts. If you enjoy these cases, consider liking and subscribing. Now then, shall we begin? Nero Wolfe and the widow in the marble room. It was just past 8 when the rain returned, slow, deliberate, and cold as a banker's handshake. I'd just stepped back into the front room, brushed off my coat, and was checking the afternoon mail when the bell rang. Fritz, of course, didn't move. That was my signal. I crossed the parquet floor, unlocked the door, and there she stood, a black shape against the dull grey evening. She wore a cloche hat with a heavy net veil, reins streaking down its edge. Her coat was good wool but soaked through. Her gloves, pearl grey, clung to her knuckles like frost. I didn't say a word. Neither did she. We stood there in the hush, with the rain ticking behind her like a clock with too many hands. She gave the smallest nod. I stepped aside. She entered with the silence of someone who'd practiced being unwelcome. I shut the door, set the bolt, and said, "Miss, or is it Mrs.? You're lucky you got the evening slot. Wolfe is upstairs with his orchids. And by lucky, I mean temporarily immune to disapproval." Her voice, when it came, was low and reserved. "I need to speak with him. Tonight. Please." "You and most of the city's aggrieved," I said. "But you have an edge. You're soaking the rug." I took her coat, draped it over the radiator, and led her into the office. The red chair took her weight. She perched forward, elbows tight to her sides, hands interlocked. I went to my desk and hit the buzzer once. The stairs creaked. Wolfe was not amused. He entered wearing his brown house jacket. His lips tightened when he saw the damp carpet, and his eyes narrowed when he saw the veil. "I suppose," he said, "this is urgent." "Yes, sir," she said. "I believe someone is trying to kill me." He gave a slow breath through his nose, stepped to the edge of the rug, and stayed there. "Madam," Wolfe said, "many believe that. A smaller number are right. Fewer still have cause to involve me. Who are you?" She hesitated. "I can't tell you. Not yet." Wolfe turned his gaze toward me. I didn't need translation. "You came here in the rain," I said, risked rejection, and sat in a damp chair for a man who despises mystery. If you won't give a name, give something. The veil tilted upward. I caught a glimpse of her jaw, pale, pinched, determined. "I'll give a place," she said. Wolfe's brows met in a minor flinch. "I'll give one word. It's why I came." He folded his arms. "Speak." Her lips barely parted. "Marble." A pause. She added, "Room." The silence that followed was almost theatrical. Wolfe stepped back slowly. His right eyebrow rose a quarter inch. "Marble Room," he said. "I haven't heard that name in years. A supper club, exclusive, East 30th. She nodded. "Someone met me there last week. They gave me a drink. I left with no memory of the hour that followed. Yesterday I found a photograph on my windowsill. It showed me asleep in one of the booths." "You were drugged?" I asked. "I believe so." "By whom?" "I don't know." "And now," Wolfe said, "you fear the next meeting will end with no waking at all." "Yes." He turned his back to her and moved toward the orchids on the shelf behind his desk. The rain tapped the window in intervals. Wolfe sighed. "You have money?" "I have enough." "Enough for a retainer?" "Yes." "Then you may tell Mr. Goodwin everything you know, from the first invitation to the marble room to the appearance of the photograph. You will not lie, not hedge, not withhold. If you do, he will know." I reached for a pad and pencil. "Wait," she said. Wolfe turned back. She was standing now, her hands at her sides. "I came only to warn you." That stopped us both. "Warn?" Wolfe asked. She nodded. "I've used aliases. Not one person knows I came here tonight, but whoever drugged me they may suspect. If anything happens to me, I want you to know where to look, that's all." She stepped away from the chair. I stood. "Hold on, that's not—" "Let her go," Wolfe said. I turned. He was still near the orchids, one hand lifting a small ceramic pot. "Let her go. We don't chase clients. If she leaves, she leaves." She stepped to the door. I opened it. Her shoes whispered on the tile. She turned once, her face still veiled. "If I return," she said, "it means I'm still alive." Then she vanished into the night. I shut the door. Wolfe resumed his place at his desk, adjusting the chair an inch to the left. "Well," I said, "that was subtle." Wolfe grunted. "She will return." "How do you figure?" He tilted his head. "She said marble room. No elaboration, no plea, just the name. She was not appealing to curiosity. She was counting on recognition." "Which you gave her?" He narrowed his eyes. "I gave nothing, but it struck a note." I moved to the radiator and retrieved the wet coat. "No label," I said. "Buttons are French. Stitching is hand-done." "Shoes?" "Prada, or a knockoff. From the soles, I'd guess she walks a lot. That coat, though, it's the real thing. The gloves were custom." "She has means, and caution, and nerves." "Yes," Wolfe said, "but not enough." He leaned forward slightly. "She left out more than her name. She left out the reason. There is a connection to me, distant perhaps, but present." "From the club?" Wolfe's eyes closed for a moment. "The Marble Room, Mr. Goodwin, is not a place one visits casually, not if one knows its history." "I don't." He opened one eye. "Precisely." I sat, pad still in hand. "You want me to check it out?" "Do not presume." He drummed his fingers once on the blotter. "Yes," he said, discreetly. "I'll need an excuse. Find one. I suppose I could pose as a man shopping for velvet wallpaper and overpriced cocktails." "That would be apt." He reached for the bell to summon Fritz. "Tell him dinner is postponed. Half an hour." "Postponed?" "Yes." He looked at me, half a frown creeping across his face. "I don't like veils, Mr. Goodwin, but I dislike mystery more." I stood, grabbed my hat, and headed to the coat closet. The rain had picked up again, soft and constant. She hadn't given us a name, but she'd left enough. And in Wolfe's world, a name was often just the final garnish, the real flavour, the threat, the fear, the truth. It always came later. That's when Wolfe began to eat. The phone rang at 9:11 sharp, 3 minutes before Fritz would have called us down for breakfast. Wolfe was already seated in the dining room, slicing open a grapefruit with a contemptuous expression. I answered. "Mr. Goodwin," said the voice, "it's Kramer. Get Wolfe and tell him he won't like it." He was right. When I returned and gave him the message, Wolfe laid down his grapefruit spoon with something resembling menace. "He said that, did he?" His exact words. Fritz, ever tactful, removed the fruit with surgical grace. Eggs Florentine were coming, but the mood had curdled. Wolfe let out a heavy sigh and stood, already irritated. "Very well. Tell him 10 minutes. It was 7. I gave Kramer the word and poured Wolfe his coffee. By 9:23, Inspector Kramer was in our office, rain-slicked, gravel-voiced, and no less red in the face than usual. He didn't sit. He tossed a file onto Wolfe's desk. "You're not going to like it." Wolfe tapped the folder once with a thick finger. "Who is she?" Kramer tilted his head. "You recognize her?" "No, I recognize her condition. She came here last night, unannounced. She refused her name. She left no trace but her fear." "Then this'll be an unpleasant footnote." He opened the file and spun it toward me. The photo showed her as we hadn't seen her, lying in a leather booth, eyes wide, blood seeping into a silk collar. The veil was still on her lap. The caption read, "Unidentified white female, found dead, 8:17 a.m., Marble Room, Private Lounge. B." Wolfe's nostrils flared. "Shot. Right temple, .32 caliber, 1 shot. Gun present. Right hand, wrapped around it neat. Suicide, then." "That's what the scene says." "And what do you say, Inspector?" Kramer looked away, jaw tight. "I say I've seen suicides with more conviction." Wolfe leaned back, steepling his fingers. "She used aliases." "Lucky us. The club manager identified her as Ms. Arabelle Frost." Wolfe grunted. "She feared being followed. That much I deduced." Kramer took out a cigar but didn't light it. He frowned, turned toward me. "I want you there, Goodwin. Quietly. I've told the club manager your insurance. Don't screw it." Wolfe growled. "I'll allow it, but you will not treat Mr. Goodwin as one of your minions." Kramer snorted. "I wouldn't dare." He left without another word. Wolfe turned to me. You know what to do? I do. And Archie? Yes. Find the truth before Kramer decides she pulled the trigger. The marble room sat behind a wrought iron fence that once enclosed a carriage stable. Its brass plaque glinted modestly under the cloudy sky. I showed my fake insurance badge to a man named Brody with a neck wider than his head. Inside, the place was a fever dream of velvet glass and polished stone. A hostess in black gloves offered coffee. I declined. The club manager, a man named Julian Vale, met me beside a velvet curtain. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and wore a carnation so white it seemed painted on. "You're with the casualty people?" he asked. "That's right. Archibald Grant, Mutual Western." He nodded and guided me through an archway toward the back lounges. "She wasn't a member," he said. "Came in with someone last week. Alone this time. Used the name Frost. I didn't know her." "You didn't speak?" "No." "And last night?" "She came in shortly after 10. Said she had a meeting. Lounge B was empty. We reserved those for discretion." "Did anyone join her?" "No one signed in, but these rooms have rear access. Staff uses them sparingly." He unlocked the lounge and stepped aside. The room was dim, soundproofed, and smelled faintly of Riesling and burnt powder. A low leather divan faced a coffee table. There was a brass lamp, a crystal ashtray, a single wineglass, and blood on the booth's right armrest. The gun, a pearl-handled .32, still rested in a paper evidence bag. "She drank?" I asked. "One glass. We found a bottle uncorked on the table." "Any food?" "No." "Phone calls?" "No record." I examined the booth. The back panelling was heavy, faux marble, but the seams were uneven. "Hidden exit?" Vale's expression didn't flicker. "I wouldn't know." I took out my notebook and scratched an idle line. "You've had suicides here before?" He hesitated. "No." "Murders?" He smiled. "Certainly not." I closed the notebook. "Then this must be very inconvenient." He turned slightly. "Tragic, and reputationally hazardous." I moved past him to study the rear door. It was locked from inside, a small brass bolt. The window was sealed. The bottle of Riesling was half empty. The wineglass showed no lipstick. The gun, they said, had her fingerprints. But a glove on the right hand would produce the same illusion. "Who cleaned the lounge this morning?" "One of our senior porters. Name's Kenneth. Reliable." "I'll need to speak with him." "Of course." He left me there for a moment. I bent close to the booth cushion. A faint indentation remained, wider than the widow's frame. A second guest? Or a staging? There was also a smear on the floor under the divan. Wine, maybe, or something heavier. Kenneth arrived moments later. Elderly, stoop-shouldered, nervous hands. "Morning," he said. "You cleaned this room?" "Yes." "See anything off?" "I found the gun and the glass." "Anything else?" He blinked. "Someone left the door cracked when I came in. Just a little." I raised an eyebrow. "It was locked." "I didn't unlock it. It was ajar." "How much?" "An inch, maybe less." That was enough. "Who had keys?" "Only Mr. Vale and myself." "And?" He paled. "I didn't open it." "I believe you." I let him go. Back at the front, I thanked Vale and declined the coffee again. Outside, the rain had returned. I hailed a cab, rode 15 blocks in silence, and stepped into the brownstone at 1:45. Wolfe was seated, napkin folded, coffee untouched. I hung up my coat and entered. "She's dead all right," I said. "Gunshot to the temple, gun in hand, locked room." "And?" "Door was found slightly ajar, though no one admits unlocking it. Wineglass had no lipstick. Booth showed signs of a second guest. Staff denies all knowledge." Wolfe scowled. "She came here to warn me. Someone killed her to silence that warning. She used an alias. No one connects her to us. Yet." Wolfe tapped the arm of his chair. "She was frightened, intelligent, and precise. She risked exposure. She gave me only the name of a place." "Which you knew?" "Yes." "Then the killer might assume you knew more." Wolfe's gaze sharpened. "That is why she came. She wanted you alive. She wanted the truth uncovered." I nodded. "There's more," I said. "The booth had a floor. Back panel loose. Could be a crawl or conduit." Wolfe raised his eyes. I want Saul there tonight. I'll arrange it. Have Fred check the back alley and service entrances. On it. He looked toward the window where the rain whispered again. This is no suicide, he said. This is an overture. To what? To something that began years ago. I closed my notebook, and may still be playing. By noon the next day, Wolfe had issued 3 instructions, consumed 2 bottles of barley water, and refused all further mention of the widow. That left the legwork to me. Not that I minded. The marble room still reeked of secrets, and someone in that plush mausoleum was lying through good teeth. I arrived at 1:17 p.m. in a slate-grey suit and a false name. Julian Vale was expecting me. We met again beneath the club's crystal archway. He looked sharper in daylight, or perhaps just more practiced. His carnation remained flawless. His lapel bore a fresh dusting of something, talc or ego. "Mr. Grant," he said with a courteous nod. "Come." He led me into the lounge, now cleansed of both blood and bad publicity. Only the ghost of Riesling remained. "Apologies for the abruptness yesterday," he said, gesturing to a booth. I sat. "You were grieving." He didn't blink. "I was inconvenienced. There's a difference." I gave a smile with no teeth. "Tell me about Arabelle Frost." He tapped a cigarette loose but didn't light it. "She wasn't a member. She'd been here once before with a man named Bookman. That night she came alone." "Bookman?" "Edwin. Financial type. Quiet. Dry as vermouth." "She meet anyone the second night?" "Not that I know. She went straight to Lounge B." "Who reserved it?" "She did." "Under her name?" He allowed a pause. "No. It was done through Mira Forrest." That got my interest. "Mira? As in the singer?" He nodded once. "Miss Forrest has influence." "She and the widow were close?" "I wouldn't say that." "What would you say?" "That they were adversarial. 2 women accustomed to silence, both trying to be heard." He folded his hands. "Mira and Bookman were also once close." "How close?" "Entangled." I made a note. Why would Mira reserve a room for someone she didn't like? That's your mystery, Mr. Grant. I leaned forward slightly. "You said Bookman brought the widow here the first time. Was that before or after she used the name Frost?" "During. He called her Adelaide." That clicked. Adelaide Bookman, the name Saul had turned up. "Did Mira know her as Adelaide?" "I imagine so, but she never used the name here." Vale stood. "If you'd like to meet Mira, she rehearses at 3. She's more cooperative when flattered." I rose. "And Bookman?" "He comes for lunch. Today you're lucky." He smiled, powdered lapel catching a ray of sun. "Don't press him too hard. He's not a man who likes bruises." The dining salon had a ceiling painted with vines and cherubs, and patrons who rarely looked up. I waited by the marble planter, nursing a weak highball. At 1:42, a man entered without flourish. Tall, late 50s, trim moustache, eyes like cold hardware. Edwin Bookman. He wore a brown Glen check suit and carried a folded umbrella, bone handle, polished tip. He sat alone, ordered consommé. I waited until the soup had been delivered, then crossed the room. "Mr. Bookman," he glanced up. "Yes?" "Archibald Grant, Mutual Western. I'm following up on the incident." "Which?" "The death in Lounge B." He stiffened, spoon-halted. "I'm not involved." "Didn't say you were." He set the spoon down gently. "I have nothing to contribute." "You brought her here once." He hesitated. "Yes." "She called herself Arabelle." "That was her prerogative." "But you knew her real name?" "Yes." "Adelaide Bookman?" He looked away. "Once." "You were married?" "Correct." "Divorced?" "Presumed widowed. Circumstances evolved." "Why the alias?" "Ask her." "I can't. She's dead." He blinked slowly. "I was told it was suicide." "It doesn't look that way." He said nothing. "You were seen with Mira Forrest." "That's public record. I managed her funds. She sings. I sign checks." "Did Mira know your wife?" "I believe so." "Did she like her?" "No." "Why?" He pushed the bowl away. "They were similar, and Mira dislikes mirrors." That landed. "Who took the photo?" He didn't flinch. What photo? The one left on Adelaide's windowsill. I've never seen it. Someone had. He adjusted his cufflinks. She was unstable. She was frightened. He met my gaze. She was many things. I stood. You were the last person to bring her here. You were her husband. You're tied to her name, her alias, and a dead woman with your monogram stitched in her gloves. I'm not under arrest. Yet. He rose too. If you come here again, Mr. Grant, bring a subpoena. He left his untouched wine. I made a note to taste it. Bitter men often order sweet drinks. At 2:55, I took a side hallway to the performance room. Mira Forrest was warming up, a slow minor chord rising from the baby grand behind her. She wore a black satin gown and a string of blue pearls. Her voice was smoke and silk. She paused when I entered, let her gaze drift across the room. You're not the piano tuner. No, I sell insurance. I'm already insured. Then let's call it curiosity. She smiled. I admire curiosity. It's the final luxury. I approached. You knew Arabelle Frost? Not well. But you arranged her lounge. That's not a crime. No, but it's odd. I do many odd things. She died after drinking from a bottle ordered under your name. She raised an eyebrow. You think I poisoned her? I think you knew she was coming. I think you wanted privacy. She asked me for a favour. Why? Because I owed her. For what? She didn't say. She didn't need to? She gave a short laugh. I owe many things to many ghosts. You disliked her. She wore her wounds like perfume. It was exhausting. But you helped her. I helped myself. I wanted her gone. That's motive. She turned toward the piano and played a single dissonant chord. That's also theatre. I stepped closer. Who took the photograph? What photograph? You know. She looked up. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not the one to fear. I let that hang. She held my gaze, then softly, Bookman. What about him? He doesn't know how to be left. I waited. She played another low note. He found her once, he'll find her again. Too late, she said nothing. I turned to leave. Wait, I paused. She called me Monday, said she had something to say. About what? She didn't say, just that it would end here. And? I thought she meant music. She turned to the keys. I was wrong. At 4:27 I was back at the brownstone. Wolfe was mid-discourse with Theodore, arguing over a fertilizer blend. He paused when I entered, eyes scanning my face. Report, he said. I settled into the red chair. Vale is vain, cautious and polished. He knew more than he claimed, but not enough to kill. Go on. Mira Forrest hates mirrors and Adelaide. She helped arrange the meeting, but claims it was repayment. Says Bookman is the dangerous one. Wolfe steepled his fingers. And Bookman? He's cold, sharp, smart. They were married once, maybe legally, maybe not. He said she was unstable, didn't deny knowing about the alias, didn't care she was dead. Guilt? No. Control. Wolfe grunted. Did he know about the photograph? He claimed not to. Too smoothly. Far too. Wolfe nodded once. And you? I believe Adelaide was lured. Mira helped. Bookman watched. Vale hosted. And none fired the gun. I hesitated. I don't think it mattered who pulled the trigger. Explain. She was dead the moment she stepped in. Wolfe was silent. Bookman doesn't grieve. Mira rehearses. Vale powders his lapel. They've all moved on. No, Wolfe said. They've all adjusted. To what? To her absence. To what she knew. To what she threatened. I leaned forward. She didn't come for safety. No, Wolfe said. She came for penance. I nodded. And she left a war behind her. Wolfe stood, slow and deliberate. Then we must read the battlefield. I found the file in a drawer that should have been locked, buried beneath a fake ledger and a packet of unsent invoices. The drawer belonged to Julian Vale. The ledger belonged to the marble room. And the file, that belonged to Adelaide's late husband. The name was there in clear print. Charles T. Bookman, deceased, listed as a former defence contractor. listed again as the original holder of a policy for a diamond necklace appraised at $82,000. Problem was, the diamonds weren't real. The insurer, Loring and Dutch, had quietly contested the claim back in '43, citing a post-mortem lab report. The necklace was a forgery. The payout had been blocked, and according to the file, no one had ever contested it. No widow, no family, not even a lawyer. That's not how widows usually behave. I copied what I could and returned the drawer to its smug alignment. Vale had stepped out to make a call. The receptionist had been distracted by an orchid delivery. Not Wolfe's, not Fritz's, just timing, the kind you don't question. Back in the lobby, I adjusted my tie, tipped the girl at the desk, and stepped into a cab before Vale noticed the drawer had whispered. At the brownstone, Fritz was plating veal with garlic reduction when I walked in. Wolfe, of course, was upstairs in the plant rooms, the daily hour of orchid indulgence absolute and unbroken. I waited. At 6:01 the buzzer sounded. One chime. I entered the office. Wolfe was already seated in the yellow chair, eyes half-lidded, patience razor-thin. "Well?" he asked. "Found the Bookman file." "And?" Loring and Dutch filed a challenge in '43. The diamonds were fake, no payout, no complaint. Suggesting? She knew, possibly before his death. She didn't press a claim. Not even a letter. Odd. She vanished right after the accident. The papers said she drowned, but her body was never found. Wolfe tilted his head back slightly. Convenient. For whom? For both of them, maybe. He fakes a maritime accident. She disappears with forged stones. Insurance gets voided. Everyone walks. Except, Wolfe said, that she walked back. Right into a booth with a bullet in it. Was the file legitimate? Internal memo, real names, real dates, and Bookman's signature. Wolfe stared at the ceiling. If she returned under an alias, she must have believed someone wanted her found. Or needed her to be. Go on. She knew the stones were fake. So did her husband. They tried to beat the system, failed, and disappeared. But someone still wanted silence. Wolfe scowled. That necklace is a fulcrum, not the motive, not yet, but central. I leaned forward. There's more. Of course there is. I pulled a crumpled sketch from my coat. I'd made it the night before. The mirrored wall in Lounge B, I said. It's a fake. Wolfe opened one eye. Define fake. False perspective. There's a 2-inch recess behind the middle panel. Looks solid, isn't. Purpose? Concealment, possibly access. Could fit a camera or a weapon. Wolfe closed his eye again. Who else knows? Fred's checking the duct system tonight, but Vale's evasive. Mira pretends not to see. Bookman, I'd bet my socks he's used it. And you? I didn't touch it, but I traced the fingerprints. Most were recent. One was old, female. Wolfe sat back. She was lured into a room with a hidden floor, given a drink, and left to pose for a death no one wanted explained. I nodded. And you still believe she came to protect you? She said so. Then why not tell the whole story? Because she believed the secret would die with her. Romantic. No, Wolfe said, calculated. He tapped the desk. Bring me the copy of the policy and the sketch. Fritz! The door opened silently. Yes, sir? Dinner in 20 minutes. Something light. Yes, sir. He vanished. I handed Wolfe the file and folded the sketch beside his ashtray. There's one more thing, I said. Oh? Fritz heard something, up near the orchids. Wolfe narrowed his eyes. Be precise. He said there was a knock, 3 taps, paused, then a 4th. Wolfe didn't move. From where? Northwest wall, behind the bench. Wolfe slowly turned toward the orchid room. That wall backs the dumbwaiter shaft. I checked it, nothing obvious. Did he hear anything after? Only silence. Wolfe stood, moved to the shelf, picked up a small bronze watering can. Someone was there? Possibly. Listening? Or warning? He returned to his chair. We are being watched, Mr. Goodwin. I'd assumed so. Then act like it. I sat back. So, what's next? He folded his hands. Saul is tracing Bookman's banking history. You will locate the original appraiser of that necklace. Name? Should be on page 3. I flipped the file. Claude Bremer, registered gemologist. Manhattan office closed in 44. Alive? I'll check. Do so. He tapped the sketch. That flaw in the mirror, it's deliberate. I agree. Then the room itself is part of the trap. Or the bait. We sat in silence for a full minute. Then Wolfe spoke again. Bookman orchestrated something. Vale facilitated it. Mira varnished it. But Adelaide, she was the axis. And now? She's still spinning. Fritz entered again. Dinner is ready. Wolfe rose. Do not interrupt me tomorrow before 9. I won't. Unless someone dies. I nodded. Even then, knock softly. At precisely 10:46 that morning, the bell rang once, long and firm, and I crossed the parquet to greet a man who never rang twice. Saul Pantzer stood in his charcoal overcoat, hair damp with sleet, one hand in his pocket and the other carrying the folder that would change the weather in Wolfe's office. Rain in the Bronx, he said. You bring it with you? Only the good parts. I stepped back, let him in, locked the door behind us. The office was warm. Wolfe was already seated, fingers spread on the arms of the yellow chair. Fritz had brought coffee and vanished. No interruptions, no orchids, no excuses. Saul hung his coat, walked in without invitation, and sat down, not in the red chair, never, but on the edge of mine. He laid the folder on the blotter and looked at Wolfe. You were right. Of course. Saul didn't blink. Her name was Adelaide Juno Bookman, born 1907, married Charles Thomas Bookman in 1934. He was already working contracts for the War Department. Wolfe moved one finger. Continue. Charles owned a materials firm, low-yield composites, armor plating. He was doing mid-sized defense work by 41, classified, profitable. And the accident? Yacht, June of 43. Off the coast near Rockland, Maine. Heavy fog. The boat went down. His body washed ashore 3 days later. And hers? Never recovered. Declared drowned after a Coast Guard review. They weren't alone on the boat, but the witnesses were vague. Wolfe adjusted the silver pen beside him. Names? Crewmen, 2 cooks, all hired through a secondary agency. And? None of them gave statements under oath. The case was quietly closed. Very quietly. Wolfe sipped his coffee, eyes half closed. Insurance? She was listed as sole beneficiary, but the necklace was contested, no payout. And she vanished. Right. Until now. Saul tapped the folder. There's more. Wolfe gave the barest nod. She resurfaced 2 years later in Atlantic City. New name, Arabelle Frost. Took a position under a hotel alias, house secretary, high-end clientele. That job lasted 6 months. Then she moved to Philadelphia. Same name, different story. Became an art buyer. For whom? A man named Victor Kells died in 49. Heart attack. She was at the funeral. And then? Back to New York. Changed her name again. Briefly Arabelle June, then reverted to Frost. Wolfe leaned back. No marriage certificate, no legal trail. No, Saul said. She was invisible, but not erased. I looked over his shoulder. She pulled a ghost act, slid between cracks. Saul nodded. Until someone pulled her back. Wolfe steepled his fingers. Charles Bookman? Doubtful. He's still dead. Autopsy confirmed it. Wolfe arched one brow. Unless it was staged. 3 layers deep, Saul said. Teeth, DNA, military dentist. It was him. Wolfe gave the smallest grunt of acceptance. Then someone else found her. She registered under Frost at the Marble Room 2 weeks ago. Mira Forrest reserved the room. And Bookman? Still tied to a holding company that owns a minor share of the club. Quiet stake, no board seat. I stood. That's the link. Wolfe remained still. No, he said. That's the noose. I moved to pour myself coffee, gave Saul a refill. You said she worked art in Philly? Saul nodded. Forgery, most likely. Wolfe looked up. She understood authentication. Intimately. Then the forged necklace. She likely knew before the accident. I paced toward the window. Maybe the accident was her idea. Or his. Wolfe tapped the armrest once. She vanished to escape something. Not prison, I said. She had options. Saul opened the folder again. There's a photograph taken last year, mid-town. She's watching a man step into a building. Who? Saul hesitated. Julian Vale. That did it. Wolfe's mouth compressed. She followed him? More than once. Documented? Twice. Then she stopped showing up. I sat. So Vale knew, at least, that she was back. And didn't tell Bookman, Saul said. Or did, Wolfe murmured. There was a pause, then Wolfe spoke again. She whispered my name. Why? Saul shook his head. Can't place it. She never contacted me before. Not even indirectly. No. Then why now? She was afraid. Yes, but of what? I cleared my throat. I think the diamonds are one thing, but she knew something else. Wolfe gave a small nod. The room, the mirrors, the hidden passage, and the wine. She knew how it was done. Maybe not who, but how. Saul closed the folder. And she came to warn you. Or bait me. Why? She knew Vale would see her enter the brownstone. She counted on it. I looked to Wolfe. And? She knew he'd assume I knew more than I did. Which you now do. He rose. Bring Nero Forest tomorrow, at noon. Saul stood. She won't come. Then make her. Saul gave a nod and left. Wolfe turned to me. Mr. Goodwin, you are to locate Victor Kells's estate, his accountant, if alive. And? Determine what paintings were acquired between 47 and 49. Forgery hunt? No. Pattern recognition. I finished the coffee. You think she forged more than art? I think she forged her life. And we're holding the last print. He nodded once, then turned toward the orchids. Fritz entered. Lunch, sir? Yes, Wolfe said. And Mr. Goodwin? He'll eat with Saul. Fritz left. Wolfe didn't look back. He said softly, The second name is never random, then vanished through the green door. There's something about a ledger that never lies, even when the people around it do. I spent the morning with my elbows pressed into a polished brass counter at the back of the marble room, flipping pages that smelled faintly of perfume, gin, and bad intentions. The guest book was meticulous. Names, entry times, reservations, billing references, all logged by hand in a cursive so tight it could pass for engraving. But Arabelle Frost, or Adelaide Bookman for that matter, wasn't there. Not once. Not on the night she died. Not the week before. Not ever. I flipped back and forth through the pages until my thumb cramped. Then I asked the hostess, a young thing with a clipped voice and tightly pinned curls, Are there any auxiliary logs? Meaning? Backroom guests, off-the-books access, that sort of thing. She looked over her shoulder. Everything official is in that book. And unofficial? She blinked. I don't know what you mean. Which meant she did. I thanked her, left a folded dollar on the counter and stepped into the hall. Vale was in his office. Nero Forest was not. So I started with the easier target. He greeted me like a man expecting praise, standing behind his desk, smoothing his lapel, all powder and poise. Back again, Mr. Grant? Couldn't resist. He gestured to the chair across from him. I didn't sit. I checked the log, I said. The woman who died, she never signed in. He smiled. Discretion is a currency here. Meaning? Some guests prefer privacy. From you? From the book. So she snuck in? She was ushered. By whom? He looked out the window. Nero Forest. Your star attraction. Our shared liability. I raised a brow. She asked to use Lounge B, said it was for a private engagement. With a corpse, he scowled. No, that was a surprise. I studied him. Let's talk about the handbag. What handbag? The one she had when she came in. Fritz saw it when she visited our office. Small, beaded, black clasp, gone now. She left with it. She died. He tapped his fingers once, twice, then stopped. If a personal item is missing, I'll check with Lost and Found. You do that. I turned to go. Wait, he said. I paused. He stepped around the desk and closed the office door gently behind him. Let's speak plainly, Mr. Goodwin. Let's. You're not insurance. No. You're Wolfe's man. I gave a small smile. You're catching on. I'm willing to offer compensation. For what? For walking away. I stared at him. From what, Mr. Vale? From a misunderstanding, a tragic death, a tangled past. He reached into his desk and retrieved a thin envelope. I didn't move. You think this is how it works? I think, he said carefully, you're a man who understands discretion. I understand leverage. He pressed the envelope forward. There's no story here, just a misstep. Let it be. I looked at the envelope. Cream paper. Heavy stock. No name. Tell me what was in her bag. I don't know. Then tell me who does. Mira. You're sure? She was nervous. She asked for the room. She stayed behind after the police. And? She said nothing, but she wiped the table twice. And the mirror? He flinched. Is it true? I asked. There's a hollow panel? He didn't answer. I took a step forward. Adelaide Bookman came back from the dead. Someone wanted her erased again. The room was part of it. So was the wine. So was the missing bag. He turned away. You should take the envelope. I'd rather take the truth. You won't get it. Someone will. He reached for a cigarette. I opened the door and left him in silence. Mira Forrest wasn't rehearsing. She was in the back parlour, seated beside a decanter of red wine and an untouched saucer of almonds. She watched me approach in the mirror. Still circling? She asked. Still hunting? She turned. Should I offer you a drink or a shovel? I want to know what was in her handbag. She didn't have one. She did when she left our office. Then she lost it. Or someone took it. She sipped her wine. Did Vale send you? No. He tried to pay me off. She smiled. Did you accept? Not even tempted. She set down the glass. Adelaide was blackmailing him. Over what? I don't know. Yes, you do. She stood. I know she had a photo and a letter. To whom? Her husband. Bookman's dead. Not to her. You think she was writing ghosts? No, she was writing leverage. She gave it to you? She asked me to keep it safe. And did you? I don't have it. But you did. She hesitated. I gave it to Vale. Why? He threatened me. How? Not with fists. With silence. I stepped closer. He threatened to bury you? To unbook me. To erase my name. From the club? From everything. I stared at her. You gave him the bag. I thought he'd back off. He didn't, she nodded. He wanted her gone. Why? She remembered too much. I exhaled. She died without a name, without a ledger entry, without her things. And now? Now we start finding them. She looked away. She wanted you involved. She came to warn us. She thought it would scare him. It did. I left the parlour. Outside, the sleet was turning to rain. The brownstone waited. So did Wolfe. And something, somewhere, was still in that bag. Wolfe waited until Fritz cleared the last of the dishes. Roast squab, artichoke hearts, fluted potatoes. I watched the steam from the coffee rise like a slow fog behind the yellow chair. He hadn't spoken through the meal, not even to condemn the shallots. When he did speak, it came with the weight of certainty. Mr. Goodwin, he said, we have been chasing a ghost. I closed my notebook. Adelaide? No, Wolfe said, not Adelaide, the woman in the marble room. I sat forward. She's not, no, not Adelaide Juno Bookman. He reached beside the chair and placed a photograph on the blotter, the one Kramer had brought, the one we'd seen a dozen times. She died, Wolfe said, but Adelaide did not. He held up a second photo, grainy, darker, taken by Saul outside the Midtown building weeks earlier. A woman watching Vale from across the street. Compare them. I did. Both women wore veils. Both were slim, mid-height, pale-skinned. But the set of the jaw differed. So did the length of the neck, the width of the collarbone. The resemblance is deliberate, Wolfe said, and imperfect. I nodded. They used a decoy. Yes. The body found in Lounge B was not Adelaide. He leaned back. The woman who visited this office, that was Adelaide Bookman. The woman who died was not. They are not the same. How sure are you? Certain. I picked up the photos again. The subtle differences were now glaring. The woman who came here had a tremor in her left hand, I said. She held her gloves like she'd break them. Wolfe nodded. The one in the lounge had a manicure. Painted nails, no smudges. And no tremor. So, who was she? A proxy. For whom? For Adelaide, or for someone Adelaide feared. I let that settle. She came here knowing someone might kill the wrong woman. Yes, she expected it. Perhaps she arranged it. That took a moment to absorb. You think she set up a double? Wolfe steepled his fingers. She feared exposure. She feared Vale, possibly Bookman. She needed to disappear, again, but this time convincingly. And she used the marble room to do it. Yes. I stood, walked once around the desk, thinking, why visit us? To ensure the wrong people saw her enter. To suggest she was still in town. Correct. I paced back. So who died? Wolfe tapped the pen against his thumb. That, he said, is our next inquiry. He pointed toward the typewritten guest list I'd lifted from the club. There's one name scratched in pencil at the edge. I checked the list. L. Danning? Check it. I went to the phone, called Lon Cohen, gave the name, waited. 5 minutes later I had it. Lenora Danning, I said. Former cabaret dancer. Had a stint at the Flamingo Lounge. Went missing 3 weeks ago. Wolfe nodded. She was paid to impersonate Adelaide. She was murdered for it. He stood, slowly, deliberately. Summon Inspector Kramer. Now? Now. Kramer arrived an hour later, coat dripping, face drawn. He didn't sit. He never did when Wolfe called first. This had better be good, he said. It is, Wolfe replied. You buried the wrong woman. Kramer's mouth twitched. Explain. Wolfe handed him both photos. This one, he said, tapping Adelaide's. Visited me. This one, pointing to the body, died in your crime scene. Kramer stared at them. They're the same. No, Wolfe said, they are not, and I can prove it. How? Fingerprints. You still have them. Yes. Run them against the prints of Lenora Danning, former cabaret performer, missing. Kramer blinked. I'll need cause. She worked at the marble room. She vanished. She resembled the victim. You want cause? I've just given you 6. Kramer stepped back. This changes things. Yes, Wolfe said, it does. He gestured toward the sketch I'd made of the hidden panel in Lounge B. She was lured, drugged, killed, and left with a gun in hand, but the real target was never there. And the real woman? Still alive. Kramer exhaled. I'll get the prints. He left without another word. Wolfe turned to me. You'll find Adelaide. Where? She had at least 2 aliases before. She'll have a third. Alone? No. Take Saul. I nodded. And the motive? Wolfe looked away. She feared being seen. By Vale? By someone with power, enough to erase her again. I grabbed my coat. Let's hope she doesn't want to be erased. Find her, Wolfe said, before someone else does. Kramer called at 8:41 a.m., and for once Wolfe was already in his chair. No good morning, the inspector said. Just facts. I prefer it that way, Wolfe replied. The prints came back. They don't match. The dead woman? Not Adelaide Juno Bookman. Real name is Lenora Danning, former nightclub girl. 1 arrest for theft. Disappeared last month. I'll send a thank you card. You can send your damn smugness in a box, Kramer growled. Your ghost theory holds water. He hung up. Wolfe smiled slightly. Mr. Goodwin. Yes? Begin with the wreck. I went back to the beginning, the reported death of Charles T. Bookman, June 1943. The accident had occurred off the fog-heavy coast of Rockland, Maine. A leased yacht, a paid crew, a week-long voyage for recreation. The boat went down fast, according to surviving crew. Charles was found 3 days later. Adelaide was never found at all. The insurance investigation had closed quickly. Too quickly. I found the original Coast Guard report in a federal archive uptown, filed by Ensign P.L. Mercer. It mentioned gale conditions, visibility under a quarter mile, conflicting accounts of timing, and inconsistent crew logs. The crew's names were listed, but none had signatures. I flagged it. From there, I found a photo, snapped on the dock the day before departure. Charles wore a Panama hat and smiled like he didn't plan to die. Adelaide stood beside him, but behind them, in the background, I spotted a third face, Edwin Bookman. I had to squint, but it was him. 10 years younger, moustache thinner, smile wider. He wasn't listed on the manifest. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was reclining with his index fingers pressed together. "Well?" he asked. I dropped the photo on the blotter. "That's our man." "Indeed." He was there, off the books. Then the disappearance was orchestrated. I nodded. "Worse, it was practiced." Wolfe turned slightly. "You believe he tested it once?" "I do." Wolfe closed his eyes. "Then Adelaide's death was never planned, only mimicked. Until now." He opened his eyes. "Mr. Goodwin, you've said Edwin Bookman was dry as vermouth." "Exactly. A man like that doesn't drown, he vanishes. And twice now." Wolfe tapped the edge of the blotter. "He faked his brother's death." "And helped fake hers." Wolfe stood. "Or," he said, "he is Charles." That stopped the air cold. I looked down at the photo. Same nose, same jaw, moustache different, hair darker, posture stiffer. But the possibility was now unbearable. They were twins. Perhaps. Or he survived the wreck. Perhaps. And built a new identity. Yes. To watch her. To control her. To end her? Only if she broke the pact. I walked to the window. She did. She came here. Wolfe joined me. We have 1 death, 2 disappearances, 3 identities. And 1 woman who knew the truth. He sat again. Then she was never the target. The lie was. I picked up the photo. We can test the theory. How? DNA. Cross-reference Charles Bookman's remains. You'll need a bone. I'll need a judge. Wolfe looked amused. I'll call Saul. The next day I met Saul outside a chapel in Flatbush. He lit a cigarette with no joy. You sure? Yes. We stepped inside. Records showed Charles Bookman had been buried under false pretenses. The crypt was sealed, but the family vault listed both Charles and Edwin, born a year apart, died 6 apart. 2 plots, 1 corpse. Later that week, Saul arranged access. The casket was opened. The remains still wore a watch inscribed, "To CTB." With resolve, AJB. We tested a sample. A week passed. The results came by envelope, sealed, plain, silent. I opened it in Wolfe's office. He read it aloud. Subject matches known sample of Edwin R. Bookman. Does not match Charles T. Bookman. I set the letter down. So Charles didn't die in 43. No. Edwin did. Yes. And Charles took his life. Name, status, legacy. And disappeared. No, Wolfe said softly. He stayed close, watched her, controlled her. Until she came to you. He nodded. She threatened to speak. And he sent Lenora Danning. Or allowed Vale to. I stood. So where is Charles now? Wolfe looked toward the door. Back at the club. Julian Vale. Wolfe said nothing. The silence was the answer. I leaned forward. He changed his name. Yes. He's the owner. Yes. He staged his wife's murder. She staged her return. I exhaled. Then we have a name. We have a motive. We have a corpse. Wolfe gave a single nod. And now, he said, we need a confession. The marble room looked different after midnight. The lighting was subdued, nearly theatrical. The curtains were half drawn. The chandeliers dimmed to their lowest amber hum. Outside, Gramercy Park was draped in rain. I was seated in a corner booth I hadn't paid for, watching a hallway I wasn't supposed to see. The cellar door stood just beyond the kitchens, narrow, arched, black lacquered. Vale had told me no one used it after hours. He was wrong. At 12:07, Mira Forrest slipped past the curtain, her heels soft on the tile. She wasn't wearing her stage dress, just a brown trench coat, cinched tight, collar raised. No makeup, no earrings. She moved like someone sneaking into her own secret. I waited 10 seconds, then followed. I didn't rush. I didn't need to. The door had a slow hinge and I heard it creak closed below me. The cellar stairs were steep, made of poured concrete, smoothed at the edges. I took them one at a time, hand on the wall. At the bottom the light was yellow, dusty. It buzzed. Mira stood 10 feet ahead, her back to me. She wasn't alone. A man knelt at a wooden crate, gloved hands prying open the top. His back was hunched, the light above him barely catching his profile. I didn't recognize him at first. Then he spoke. "Tell Vale he's out of time." His voice was dry, distinct. Mira didn't answer. She watched as he stood and lifted something from the crate. I moved closer. It was a bundle, paper-wrapped, stamped. "Ration coupons," he said, "unmarked. These'll buy a week of anything in 5 states. She looked away. "You shouldn't have brought me here." "You've always known." "I never wanted proof. You sang for it." The man turned slightly, and I saw him. Edwin Bookman. No, Charles Bookman. Vale. Whoever he was now. He looked older in the lamplight, the polish gone, the suit rumpled, the moustache dyed just a shade too dark. "You're alive," I said. He turned to me calmly. "Mr. Goodwin. Late, but punctual." I stepped forward. "No more aliases?" He smiled. "Only the necessary ones." Mira didn't move. Bookman, or Vale, or both, set the bundle down. "There's more behind the wall," he said. "Liquor, certificates, military sugar. It goes back years." Mira spoke softly. "I didn't know." He tilted his head. "You kept singing. You kept drinking. You kept quiet." She turned to me. "He told me it was all gone, that Adelaide had taken it." "She found it," I said. "She confronted him. She threatened to go public. And he killed her." Bookman's smile didn't flicker. "No," he said, "I didn't." "You sent a decoy." "I didn't kill her." "Who did?" He shrugged. "You'll have to ask Mira." She blinked. "That's not true." "She reserved the room." "I didn't know." "You gave her the bag." "She asked me to hold it." "She asked you to hold her death." Mira turned to me, trembling. "I never opened it. I gave it to Vale." I looked at him. He nodded. "She brought photos, letters, copies of club records. She wanted me to confess." "To what?" "To all of it." "And?" I refused. "So you staged her death again." He turned toward the crate. "I offered her a deal. She said no. She ran. I lost her. Then she sent Lenora." "She what?" "She paid a woman to wear her dress, her name, her smile." Mira whispered. "She knew they'd come for her." "She made herself bait." Bookman looked at me. "I didn't kill Lenora." "Then who did?" He stepped aside. "Your guess is better than mine." I didn't believe him, but I believed he believed it. I looked at Mira. "She's scared." "She should be." "She's lying. She always has." Mira backed away. "I didn't—" "You helped." "I didn't know she'd die." "But you wanted her gone." She didn't answer. Bookman walked to the rear wall. He pressed a beam. A panel opened. Behind it, crates, envelopes, boxes marked military surplus, all dated from 45 to 48. I stepped forward and saw them. 2 coats, identical, grey wool, monogrammed at the inner collar. CTB, one with blood, one without. Mira gasped. "She wore that." I turned to her. So did he. Bookman closed the panel. "That," he said, "is the last of it." Mira looked away. I raised my voice. "You've been laundering black market goods through the marble room for 7 years." "No," he said, 10. "Adelaide found out." "She always knew." "She wanted out." He nodded. "And when she vanished, you let her." "And when she came back?" He smiled again. "I let her think she had a chance." I stepped back. "You're under arrest." "There's no one here." "I'm enough." He looked at Mira. "She'll testify." Mira didn't speak. I drew my revolver. "I said you're done." He raised his hands. No resistance. "Good. But one question." "What?" "Do you think Adelaide planned to die?" I stared at him. "No," he nodded. "Then you don't know her at all." He walked past me, hands raised. Mira followed, silent. Upstairs the light was softer. the lobby empty. I called Kramer from the phone booth by the bar. He was there in 20 minutes. They took Bookman first, then Mira. Kramer said nothing to me, just nodded once. That was enough. Outside it was raining again. Somewhere Adelaide was alive, and somewhere she was watching. The front door closed behind me at 5:46 p.m, just as Fritz was lighting the gas flame under the silver dome. It was Thursday, which meant braised veal with rosemary, golden beet puree, and whatever fresh herb had pleased Wolfe that morning. But the dining room remained dark. Wolfe was in the office, seated, waiting. The napkin hadn't moved. The yellow chair hadn't shifted. The air was tense, not from hunger, but something heavier. I entered and shut the door. He didn't look up. You declined the veal. I did. That's sacrilege. It would be wasted. I eased into my chair. We have a name. Yes. A motive. Yes. A corpse. 2, in fact. A confession? He looked at me then. Not yet. I leaned forward. Want me to go get one? No, I want you to listen. He tapped a stack of typed notes with his index finger. This case was never about inheritance, or jealousy, or revenge. He paused. It was about identity. I waited. Charles Bookman, he said, built a shell, a new name, a new voice, a new life. As Julian Vale. Yes, but the lie was built on a corpse, his brother's, which Adelaide helped bury. Metaphorically, but yes. She thought he was dead. She thought he was gone. There's a difference. She found out. She always knew, but she made peace with it. Until she didn't. Until she realized the lie had grown too large. I nodded slowly. She tried to surface. And they tried to drown her again. I reached for my notepad. You think she planned Lenora's death? No, Wolfe said, but she expected it. She staged it. She facilitated it, but someone pulled the trigger. I looked down. Mira? She's too frightened. Bookman? Too proud. Then who? He shifted slightly. Someone who understood the lie was fragile. Someone who had everything to lose if it broke. Who? Someone we haven't named yet. I stared. There's another? Yes. Wolfe picked up a single page from the pile. I traced the fund that bought the yacht in 1943. It didn't belong to Charles. No. It belonged to a private holding group, 3 names. Charles, Adelaide, Edwin. No, Charles, Mira Forrest, and one other. Who? Wolfe met my eye. Claude Bremer. The gemologist? Yes. He appraised the necklace. Yes. He certified the forgery. No. I sat back. He made the switch. Yes. He helped Charles fake the insurance claim. And the death. And stayed in the shadows. Until Adelaide returned. I nodded. She threatened to expose all of it. And he killed Lenora. Wolfe placed the page down, then helped vanish again. I stood. He's still local? He never left. Want me to bring him in? Not yet. Wolfe folded his hands. We will invite them. All of them? Yes. Tonight? Tonight. I looked at the veal, still steaming beneath the dome. You're sure? I'm never sure. I'm certain. Fritz appeared silently in the doorway. Dinner, sir? Wolfe looked at him. Bring a pot of coffee. Yes, sir. I stood. I'll call Saul and Kramer. Yes. And the lady? Wolfe paused. She's earned the right to hear it. Even if she started it. Especially if she ends it. I grabbed the phone, dialed. Across town the rain had started again. A good night for ghosts. The marble room had never felt colder. It was nearing midnight. The rain had become sleet, clinging to the sidewalk like ash. Inside, the curtains were drawn, the lights dimmed. The lounge had been cleared of guests, save for a single booth and the circle around it. Wolfe did not stand. He never did. But his presence, seated in that red leather club chair someone had borrowed from the bar's private room, filled the centre like thunderclouds behind velvet. To his left, Saul stood near the door, arms folded. I stood by the bar, notebook closed. Fritz remained upstairs at the brownstone, on strict orders not to disturb the silence unless blood was drawn. On Wolfe's right, Mira Forrest sat straight-backed in a green silk dress, knuckles white on the hem. Across from her, Vale, Julian Vale, Charles Bookman, take your pick, kept a calm, theatrical smile. Inspector Kramer stood at the rear, trench coat half-buttoned, cigar unlit, scowl calibrated to maximum efficiency. The last chair belonged to Adelaide Bookman. She entered without being announced. She wore black, no veil. Her gloves were folded in one hand. Her expression was unreadable, not angry, not mournful, present. She sat directly across from Vale. Wolfe began. "This evening," he said, "we are not here to debate ethics, morality, or legality." He looked at Vale. "We are here to identify truth, inconvenient though it may be." No one spoke. "Let us begin with this," Wolfe continued. "The woman who died in this room, this precise booth, was not Adelaide Juno Bookman. Her name was Lenora Danning." He turned his eyes on Vale. She was employed here briefly. Her resemblance to Mrs. Bookman was not accidental. Vale said nothing. "She died wearing Adelaide's coat, carrying Adelaide's bag. She was seated here at Adelaide's request, or perhaps her instruction, after being promised compensation. But what she received instead was a single bullet placed expertly behind the ear and a drink she never finished." Wolfe paused. "The reason is simple. Adelaide had become a liability, and those who built their lives on false names could not afford liabilities." Vale straightened his cuffs. "Would you like to explain how this involves me?" Wolfe didn't blink. "You're Charles Thomas Bookman." Mira gasped. Kramer stepped forward, lips twitching. Vale smiled calmly. "You have proof?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "We have dental records, a birth certificate, and a photograph, one taken on a dock in Maine the day before your brother's supposed drowning." Vale didn't flinch. "Suppose I was. What crime have I committed?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "You stole your brother's death. You can't steal what isn't claimed. You stole an identity. Then you used Adelaide's silence to construct an empire, one funded by forged diamonds, black market ration coupons, and wartime contraband." Vale leaned back. "Conjecture." "No," Wolfe said. "Ledgers, shipments, purchase orders, and 2 coats, each monogrammed with the same initials, each found in your hidden cellar." Vale turned to Mira. "I assume you helped him." Mira didn't look at him. "She didn't," Wolfe said, not knowingly. "She helped in fear, not in guilt." "And Adelaide?" Vale asked, glancing toward her. Wolfe folded his hands. "Adelaide helped you disappear, but she never forgave you. She remained quiet until she saw how far the deception had gone. When she realized Lenora's death was the plan, not a risk, she fled." Wolfe turned slightly. "She came to me." Adelaide met Wolfe's eyes and nodded once. Vale chuckled. "You were always dramatic." Wolfe leaned forward. "You staged a death to silence a witness. Not for inheritance, not for revenge, but because if Adelaide spoke, everything unravelled. And so, you unravelled her." Vale looked around the room. "And what will you do? Call the press?" Kramer stepped forward. "No, I'll call the DA." Vale rose. "I can walk out right now." "No," Wolfe said, "you can't." Behind him, Saul moved. Quietly. Surely. The exit blocked. Vale stared at him, then sat. "Is that all?" he asked. Wolfe looked to Adelaide. She said softly, "You used me. I thought it was for freedom. I thought I was helping you escape." She looked down. "But you weren't running. You were setting the table." Kramer stepped forward. "Charles Bookman, alias Julian Vale, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, obstruction, and smuggling wartime materials." Wolfe closed his notebook. Adelaide stood. "I won't testify." Kramer looked at her. "You don't have to. The evidence already did." Vale didn't resist as the cuffs clicked. Mira looked at Adelaide. "I didn't know." Adelaide nodded once. "Neither did I." Kramer turned to Wolfe. "You finished?" Wolfe looked at his watch. "Yes," he said. "Now I'll have dinner." Julian Vale blinked once. His lips parted, but Wolfe held up a finger. "You did not know the hostess," Wolfe said calmly. "You knew Adelaide. You knew her as your courier, your ghost, your leverage. She vanished when your operation folded. You assumed she was dead or tucked away somewhere. But she wasn't. She changed her name, worked menial jobs, and resurfaced in Manhattan with an inconvenient memory." "I didn't," Vale began. "You did." Wolfe cut him off. When Archie and Mr. Kramer visited your club, your first concern wasn't the woman in the morgue, it was who else might recognise her. You weren't trying to identify the body. You were trying to verify if Adelaide had finally come back to haunt you. He adjusted his weight. The dead woman, in truth, had no connection to Adelaide. A hostess, carefully selected, altered, even cosmetically, I suspect, to resemble her just enough. A desperate effort to lay Adelaide's ghost to rest publicly. Archie crossed his arms. You faked the crime to erase her again, like she never came back. Mira shifted, her expression unreadable. Wolfe's voice dropped. And the only one with the means and motive to orchestrate such a substitution was you, Mr. Vale. Julian swallowed hard. I didn't kill anyone, he said quietly. Wolfe arched a brow. You only arranged the scene? Julian's mouth twitched. I didn't think she'd actually die. Wolfe sighed. I believe that. Murder is clumsy, but conspiracy is your art. He turned to Mira. You assisted. She flinched. I didn't know. You did, Wolfe said firmly. You discovered the stash in the cellar, the coats, the ration books. You were blackmailing someone, perhaps both Julian and Adelaide, but Adelaide refused. She remembered enough to be dangerous. She threatened to tell the police what she knew, even if it ruined her. Mira opened her mouth, closed it again. Archie stepped forward. You took her coat, gave it to the hostess, drugged her? Mira's gaze dropped. Just enough to keep her quiet. You left her at the cellar stairs, Wolfe continued. The fire was staged, yes, but the smoke got real. She choked on it, died before anyone knew she wasn't who she was supposed to be. There was a silence, stretched taut across the room like piano wire. Inspector Kramer finally spoke. You're saying the woman in the morgue isn't Adelaide Vale? No, Wolfe said. She is nobody. A tragedy borrowed from the street. Adelaide is in hiding. Archie looked over. Still alive? Wolfe didn't answer at first. Then he said, Perhaps. If she saw what they did, if she understood they'd rather bury a stranger than face her, she may have vanished again. The woman has had practice. Julian Vale buried his face in his hands. Mira sat rigid like a portrait painted in regret. Wolfe took in the room, then folded his hands together. Inspector, he said, I trust you have what you need. Kramer stood. Bookman too? Wolfe nodded. He played his part. He faked his death to disappear with Adelaide. When she re-emerged, he was dragged back into the lie. Archie added, He helped cover it, but I doubt he planned it. Looked too pale to lie convincingly. Kramer sighed. I'll pull him in, along with Vale and the girl. We'll sort the rest. He turned, walking slowly toward the door. Wolfe glanced sideways. Fritz? Yes, sir. Tell them I'll take the veal after all, but not before 10. I require time to forget this affair's peculiar stench. Fritz bowed. Very good, sir. Archie looked at me. How about me? Wolfe didn't blink. You may eat in the kitchen. There was something final in the way Inspector Kramer leaned against the threshold of the office. His hat was tilted back, his coat unbuttoned, and his eyes, sharp as a carving knife, darted from Wolfe to me and back again. The rain had ceased, but left behind a cling of damp that crept in from under the sash windows. The drapes swayed slightly in the draught. I could smell gun oil, old parquet, and Fritz's distant lavender polish. Kramer didn't ask to sit, didn't ask for a beer. He just stepped in. He's on his way, Kramer said. Bookman too, you were right. Wolfe, seated regally in the yellow chair, laced his fingers over the curve of his abdomen. His eyes did not flicker. I am frequently right, Wolfe said. That is not praise. It is my profession. Kramer gave me a look. I didn't return it. I was still chewing on what we'd found inside Mira Forrest's monogrammed coat, a key to the basement of the East 38th Street building that, according to public record, had been condemned since 47. Funny what survived condemnation, like a shipping ledger, like the scent of vermouth and mothballs on old velvet drapes, like bones. She's singing now, Kramer muttered. Turned on Vale before I'd even lit a cigar. Wolfe gave a single blink, a nod of sorts. Women like Mira, he said, believe the truth is a thing to be bartered. Adelaide was never the con, merely the veil. Kramer exhaled. And Bookman? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. He calculated a loss, Not of money, but of secrecy. He let the smuggling ring die in the dark where he believed it belonged. When Adelaide tried to bring it into daylight, he chose survival. So did Julian. Footsteps in the hall. Fritz's footsteps, urgent, clipped but never disordered. He appeared not entering but hovering, chin lifted. Mr. Vale and Miss Forrest, with Inspector Rowntree, he said. They are in the front room. Kramer grunted. I'll go. He turned but paused. You want 'em in here, Wolfe? Wolfe made a small, circular gesture with 2 fingers. Presently. Kramer left without another word. The hush returned. I moved to the liquor cabinet, set out 2 glasses. Wolfe didn't take one. That told me more than the last hour of testimony had. You believe Adelaide is alive? I said. Wolfe's gaze rose to the orchid on the bookshelf, a Miltonia, striped in yellow and crimson. I believe Adelaide Forrest ceased to exist the moment she tried to become real. That sounded like a riddle, so I waited. She let herself be a symbol, a name painted over documents, over crates, over ledgers. When she tried to become flesh again, she threatened everyone who'd profited from her myth. I swirled the rye. She was the lie that told the truth. Wolfe nodded, and so had to disappear. The doorbell rang, not Fritz this time, Kramer. He escorted them in, Mira, ghost-pale and lacquered in her best attempt at calm, and Julian Vale, who looked like he'd aged 10 years since Monday. Mira sat. Vale didn't. His coat was soaked through. I want a lawyer, Vale snapped. You may have one, Wolfe said, after I've spoken. Kramer folded his arms. Wolfe inhaled. The room shrank around him. Yellow light bled onto the red chairs. His voice filled the gaps between breaths. Miss Forrest, Mr. Vale, what you've done is not singular, not new, not even clever. During the war, contraband flowed through social clubs like water. Adelaide Forrest was a perfect cipher. Elegant, reclusive, presumed dead, but useful. He looked at Mira. You sold her story, sold her name, let her face, or a close copy, reappear just long enough to revitalize a certain dormant line of interest. What changed, Miss Forrest? Mira's mouth moved. No sound. Then, she came back. Wolfe inclined his head. She came back, Mira said again. We weren't ready. Julian, he panicked. He thought if we staged the scene, made it look like she'd died again, the myth would hold. But the body wasn't hers, I said. No, Mira whispered. It was Lillian. She worked at the club. Similar build, Kramer added. Same dyed hair. Bookman had her listed as Fredericks in the payroll. No next of kin. No one looking. She agreed to it, Mira said suddenly, a flare of desperation behind her voice. She owed money. Julian promised her a cut. Wolfe raised a brow. And did he pay her before he drugged her? Julian Vale stepped forward. She was going to talk. Wolfe did not blink. She was paid to die, Wolfe said. No, Vale snapped. She was paid to vanish. But she got drunk, started telling customers she was the real Adelaide, started acting like it, dressing like it. And so, Wolfe said, she had to become a corpse. Vale's mouth snapped shut. Kramer straightened. You're both under arrest. Conspiracy, fraud, and we'll let the DA decide on the murder. No one killed her, Mira cried. Wolfe turned toward the windows, light slid down his cheek. Miss Forrest, you and Mr. Vale orchestrated a deception so intimate it blurred the line between symbol and flesh. You needed Adelaide to exist, and then you needed her to vanish. He turned back. You gambled with a woman's life, and lost. Vale's hands twitched. Mira wept silently. Kramer nodded to Rowntree. Take them. The door shut. Silence fell again. Wolfe rose slowly. He reached for the bell cord. No guests, he said. No dinner. I'll be with my orchids. And then he was gone. The room held the warmth of his absence. I stood alone, the yellow lamplight stretched across the rug, washing over the red leather of the guest chair. I sat. The cushions sighed beneath me. Somewhere beyond the glass, Manhattan inhaled and exhaled, faceless, restless, never still. And I thought, in a city built on masks, it's the veils you never lift that keep you breathing. The next morning began with the shuffle of mail on the entry table, the whistle of Fritz preparing breakfast. and the echo of unanswered questions that seemed to curl up the stairwell like cigar smoke. Wolfe did not emerge. He had declined both veal and coffee, a rare convergence that told me his thoughts had not yet settled. So I handled the mundane, Kramer's post-arrest report, the press tip-offs from Saul, and a telegram, unsigned, that simply read, "It was never me, AF." I tucked that one into the bottom drawer of my desk. Fred called in from the precinct. Vale had cracked before they even reached central booking. Mira had already confessed. And Bookman had disappeared. Vanished sometime between the third-floor stairwell and the sidewalk. That too felt like a design rather than a fluke. Around noon I stepped into the office to find Wolfe at the Globe. He had not touched it, merely stared at its polished surface as if hoping it would dissolve. He turned at the sound of my step. "Archie," he said, "I suppose they'll wish to write it as a passion scheme." "They already have," I said. Mira the jealous mistress, Vale the desperate investor, a forged woman, a body in a cellar, wartime secrets lost to cement. Wolfe's nose twitched. Fiction is always simpler than truth. It is less cumbersome. I leaned against the edge of my desk. "What do you think happened to Adelaide?" Wolfe's gaze shifted to the window. "I think she returned to the only life she ever knew, one behind the curtain, one in which her name mattered more than her voice." He paced. That alone was remarkable. Adelaide was useful. During the war, her papers moved more crates than rail cars. When peace arrived, so did irrelevance. "So she tried to become real," I said. "And learned that reality has no use for ghosts," Wolfe said. He stopped by the bookshelves, selected a volume, a French botanical treatise, and closed it again. "I loathe such cases," he said. I didn't answer. He continued, "There is no joy in untangling motives rooted in fear, or in confronting the damage caused not by greed or wrath, but by the quiet desperation to remain invisible." I sat. "And yet," Wolfe said, lowering himself into his chair, "the law must render account, even when it limps behind the lie." He waved a hand. "You may inform Inspector Kramer that we will speak no further to the press, and that I expect a statement correcting the claim that I inferred the body's identity from lipstick shade." "That's what the Chronicle ran?" "Page 4, Wolfe said bitterly. I made a note to send a strongly worded letter. That night, the brownstone was still. Fritz laid out the evening meal in silence: roast duck, a wild rice pilaf, and mint-stewed prunes. Wolfe ate mechanically. He did not object to the brandy I poured, but neither did he request more. After dinner, he withdrew to the plant rooms. I heard the humidifiers click to life, the rustle of leaves. And I remained. I sat once more in the red chair. The windows glowed with city haze. The skyline, always just beyond reach, blinked its soft warning lights and silent promises. My mind drifted. Back to the first time I saw Adelaide's portrait, the one that hung in the club's anteroom, wreathed in tulle. It wasn't the details that haunted me. It wasn't the cheekbones or the corsage. It was the eyes, too steady, too silent, and the fact that no one could swear they belonged to her. It made me think of all the other names people borrowed. How many lives, I wondered, had been lived under someone else's shadow? The telephone rang at 9. I picked up. A woman's voice. "I just wanted you to know," she said. "He never saw me." Click. The line went dead. I didn't trace the number. The next day brought rain again, the type that stays close to the street and makes you believe the city might dissolve if it stopped pretending. Kramer returned. Not for questions, just to sit. We didn't say much. He took the couch. I stayed in the red chair. "You think she's alive?" he finally asked. Wolfe, who had just entered from the kitchen, answered without sitting. "Yes," Kramer nodded. "You going to tell anyone?" Wolfe frowned. "I solve crimes, Inspector. I do not exhume phantoms." That seemed to satisfy him. Kramer rose. "Then I'll leave her to the fog." He left without shaking hands. I turned to Wolfe. "You really think she'll vanish for good?" Wolfe sank into the yellow chair. "I think Adelaide Forrest never quite existed. Only the memory of her." The grandfather clock struck 10. The sound echoed through the brownstone like a benediction. Wolfe closed his eyes. "Archie." "Yes?" "Tomorrow. I want nothing before noon, not even orchids." That was as close as he'd come to weary. I stood, turned off the lights. As I reached the door, I glanced back once. Wolfe in yellow, the room bathed in amber, the red chairs empty again, and outside, the city dreaming behind veils it had no interest in lifting.